Committing a Crime Called Rest. I wouldn't say this is the book that opened my eyes to seeing that this is the type of reality that we exist in. A society where rest is prohibited, but people don't know. A society where resting is actually the biggest crime you can commit against the society. Because the society expects you to always hustle, always chase, always grind, always work, always do something that is definitely going to be taking your time and your energy. That is what it requires from you. So it doesn't need you to rest. It doesn't need you to pause. It doesn't need you to stop. And if you decide to do any of those things, you're committing a crime called rest. Anyways, this particular book didn't open my eyes to seeing this fact. I actually knew about it growing up. I've been a child that pays attention. I always observe. I will never stop observing. I'm still observing. So I started observing this particular fact from when I was a kid. I actually did not understand it back then. I just knew that whatever these adults were doing, I don't want to do it because they were not resting. My mother was not resting. My uncles, aunties, my father, neighbors, stranger, nobody was resting. From the type of environment I grew up in, every morning, every waking day is another day to hustle. Every waking day is another day to work, to walk. Every waking day is another day to chase. So yeah, nobody was resting. And at a very little age, I just told myself that, nah, this is not the type of life that I want to live. And that is why I actually agreed to the fact of going through the educational system. I did it well. I did it without being stubborn about it because I thought that was actually going to pick me up and take me off that particular pit of not resting. I thought I was going to grow up, get a better job, I will have time for myself. But unfortunately for me, I was still in the society that doesn't agree or doesn't approve of rest. So I got to experience it too. But anyways, back to the main topic. The book called Committing a Crime Called Rest didn't open my eyes, of course, but it brings awareness to the reader. Whosoever the reader is, reading that particular book, you instantly get that awareness that you can start seeing in your present society or environment. Just from reading that book, you can start seeing it. You will start seeing it. You see how your friends aren't resting, your parents have never rested, you are not resting, your partner isn't resting, your siblings, nobody's resting. Everybody's actually, going, chasing, dreaming, planning, constantly doing something, and nobody's ever resting. Nobody's talking about rest. Nobody dares talk about rest. So yeah, this is not the first book that I have read that has practically changed my life in a way. The first book I read that, somehow crumbled my old reality, shrinked it, and helped me start building a better reality, which is based on my new belief system, is a book called The Power of Now. This book is not as short as Committing a Crime Called Rest. Committing a Crime Called Rest is a short book, straight to the point, hits the hammer on the nail, or the nail on the hammer. But yeah, it's a straightforward book, very short. But then The Power of Now is a very long, detailed book that anybody that reads the particular book, no matter what state you are in, you're going to be dragged back to the now, to the present moment, which is something that we neglect. We all neglect the present moment, working for the future or trying to avoid the past. And we have never had time to actually stay in the moment. So that is what The Power of Now, that's what it did to me. It actually brought me to the present moment, how to live my life in the present moment, how to do whatever I'm doing in the present moment, not thinking too much about the future of it or how the past is affecting it, just living in the present moment. So that particular book is one of the greatest book ever that has changed my life, that will keep changing my life, that has brought this calmness, and has grounded me. That's the first book that did that for me. Now, the Committing a Crime Called Rest, what this particular book did for me is it helped me express how growing up, seeing how people around me isn't resting, nobody ever dared to rest, and now subconsciously learning that and also joining the rat race, how in joining the rat race subconsciously I get burnt out and I get to the point where I want to give up, but I can't, because again, everybody has to keep moving. Nobody gives up. It's either you die or you keep going. How I can actually rest, and how that rest is actually going to be the best thing I can ever do for myself when it comes to, whatever it is I'm trying to create in life, whatever it is that I am working on. How there is power in resting. That is what it did for me. It showed me how there is actually power in resting, how there is actually advantage. The advantage in resting is actually more than the disadvantage. Now, the disadvantage is just going to be you being shunned by people, being, disliked. I don't want to use the word hate, but the advantage is for your own benefits. Like, you benefit a lot from resting. Now, I feel like I'm actually jumping to the end of the book. Let's talk about the book a little bit. Now, I wrote this book, Committing a Crime Called Rest, out of experience, okay, out of like personal experience. I didn't want to give it away. I just wanted to start this as a conversation. Anyways, I wrote this particular book out of personal experience and also out of observing everybody around me. Like I said, the kind of environment I grew up in Benue State, I never saw anybody rest. Everybody was on track. Everybody was, doing something. Even as a child, I was also doing something at that age, because resting is again a crime. So from observing, everybody around me, to growing up and embodying what they were doing, which I did not like, which is hustling and chasing, and doing this for a very long period of time. See, I got burnt out. I got very overwhelmed. And I decided that, okay, I want to rest. As soon as I said I wanted to rest, how I was committing a crime. Instantly, it became a crime. Nobody wants to associate with me anymore. And the ones that want to associate with me wants to influence me to go back on track. And personally speaking, everyone around me just wanted me to go back on track. And at that moment, I actually thought that, so if I'm actually not on track, if I'm not chasing, if I'm not doing all these things, does it mean that I'm useless? Does it mean that there is something wrong with me? Does it mean that I'm actually of no use to, useless? I'm actually of no use to the people around me, because now I'm not chasing and I'm not bringing back, what I've chased and I've gotten. Like, does it mean that my life is any lesser because I've decided to rest? Yeah, that is where I got to. That's the point in my life that I got to, that I wrote this particular book called Committing a Crime Called Rest. Now, from my own experience, and then from observing other people, how burnt out they are. Like, I see people that are so tired of going to work. They complain every day. They don't want to wake up for the next day and go to work. They are tired of how the day keep repeating themselves, like again and again. They do the same thing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, without really having time for themselves, without even really having time to actually sleep. You see people pay rent for expensive houses, but they get to spend time in that house lesser than, spending time outside. Like, they are always outside working, doing something, and they spend little or no time in the house that they have worked for to pay for. So I've seen it, I've observed it, and I realized that I think this particular society, or the reality that we live in, was created, and one of the prohibition was rest. Because tell me why if you decide to rest, people around you, first of all, let's not start with people. You decide to rest. First, the system or the government will start to oppress you, because every morning you wake up, the price of things is it's actually skyrocketing. So if you actually had savings before going into rest, you're going to run out of your savings. That's the government. They don't want you to rest. They always keep increasing the price of things in markets, the price of things in stores, just because they want you to keep pushing, just because they want you to keep going. Now, that aside, let's come to your present environment. Now, you're resting. Let me not say your rent is going up. No, it's still part of how, the raise in price of goods affects rent. Let's just say your present environment, you're resting. Everybody around you, either your relatives, your friends, your neighbors, will start thinking that you're a very useless person because you're not supposed to be resting. What is she doing at home on Monday? What is she doing at home on Tuesday? What is she doing at home on Wednesday? What is she doing at home on Thursday? In fact, and in some way, subconsciously, they start to judge you. In some way, subconsciously, they start to, do some certain things to you, display some certain characters to you, because again, you're resting. A very big crime against them, because they are not resting. They want to rest, but they cannot rest because they have been taught not to rest. But now they're looking at you and they're seeing you rest, and they're like, how dare you? How dare you rest when we're not resting? How dare you take a pause? How dare you do this? How dare you go against what we have all been taught? You see us stay in line, you see us move, you see us, but you decide to go the other way. They start to judge you. Apart from the judge, because I actually don't care how people perceive me, but there's this certain energy that you get from people around you because you're resting. Now let's keep that aside. Have you noticed that as a person, when you're resting, when you're not chasing, when you're not doing the most to get money, to get something, how your subconscious mind is always fighting you? Have you noticed that? Because I actually noticed that. Now, during the period where I tried to take a rest and people were doing these things to me, in my present environment, from relatives, from loved ones, from friends, I was getting all these emotions and energy from them. Even me, myself, I started fighting myself. Every time I rest, every moment that I take a rest, I am always in battle with myself. My inner mind is fighting me, telling me how I am not supposed to be resting, how I've not gotten to the point where I can rest, how I need to keep going, how I'm too young to rest, how, if I rest, I'm going to be left behind. If I rest, I'm going to be, that particular insecurity start building up. And you'll see me resting and fighting with myself in the rest, making the rest, again, somehow useless. So in observing these things, I decided to write a book. I decided to write the book called Committing a Crime Called Rest. And in that particular book, I didn't want to waste your time. Like I said, I hit the hammer on the nail. I went straight to the point, opening your eyes to, seeing the society or the reality that we live in as I see it. Or maybe you already see this, but you don't understand it. I just, wrote this particular book in a way where you're able to understand how this is actually how the society works. And it is not a must that you must follow these rules and regulations or this expectation. It's just how we have been programmed to operate. And at any point of your life, you can decide to take a step backwards. You can decide to slow down. You can decide to actually rest, because there's actually benefits in resting. There's actually more advantage in resting than in chasing, than in going along. So let's talk about the book properly. In this book, I used 3 characters to explain what I understand or what I see now. I used a character called Stephanie. I used a character called Fatima or Amina, one of them. I wanted to go find out. And also used a character called Joseph. Now, these 3 characters, are characters that I wrote based on people that I know somehow. And then based on general relatable experiences, one of them grew up in a home where her parents never rested. Her parents gave birth to them and they never rested, and because of how she saw that they were working hard to provide for her, automatically she fell into the loop of working to provide, and she grew up knowing only this particular reality, and this actually influenced her present adult reality, where all she knows is work. And then she got to a point where she's now married with kids, and she has never had time to really rest. She has never had time to really just feed herself, know herself, have a relationship with herself. She had never had time to do things that she wanted to do. She just went from working to help her parents to working to also help her parents, and now she has her own immediate family and her husband, and she's working to help her immediate family and her husband. And then there's Joseph. Joseph is a man that all his life he has always wanted to make his parents proud, because he grew up really poor, and he grew up seeing his father work. Also, him picked up the loop, worked, and now his family became his responsibility. His parents became his responsibility, and now he has his own immediate family, which is also his responsibility by definition, or by society's definition and expectation. And now he's burnt out, he cannot rest, and he decided to take a rest. And as soon as he was thinking of it and just speaking out a little bit out loud to his peers, how they laughed at him and said, rest, there's no rest for the living, and how these three characters were able to bring themselves to the point where they started resting, and this actually improved the quality of their life and their experience. So those are the three characters that I used. And also, I talked about, in Committing a Crime Called Rest, I talked about the fact that a child comes into this world really empty, not knowing any rules, regulation of how this reality operates, and instantly this child was programmed, or let me not say this child, because this is how almost everybody that has come into this world has been oriented or programmed, taught how to work just from going through the educational system. They tell you to get a better degree so you can get a better job and get a better pay, and in putting you in that particular system, automatically all you know is how to survive, how to get your daily bread, how to make money, how to want more money, to make more money, to buy things that they program you to believe that these are the things that are going to bring fulfillment into your life. How they put you into different type of loops. This child is empty, like I said, and in going through the system of education, going through the religious system, going through all the systems that this particular reality has, they are automatically programmed to only know how to chase. So yeah, I bring your awareness to that fact, and just for you to realize that everything that you're doing right now, you're doing it because of how you are being taught and programmed. This is not because of how you were created to be, or how your soul wanted to come and exist. This is something that happens instantly when you get into this particular reality. They program you to go into the system and burn out your energy, your time, everything. They practically control how your reality is experienced. And another thing I also try to do is show you how, or bring your awareness, not show you, still the same thing. I also try to bring your awareness to the fact that resting is actually a blessing and not a curse. Because in resting, you get to reconnect with who you actually are. Now, growing up, you never really had a chance to, because again, you were put into a system. Now you're an adult, you're operating from that old system. But if you get to a point where you are burnt out, you're tired, you want to give up, or you don't even know what you're doing, you're confused, you're like, what the hell is happening? How did I get into this line of career? How did I get into this relationship? How did I get into this type of life? You're questioning something about your reality. Now, when you get to that point, all you have to do is realize that you need rest. That's why this book was created, because that's the point I got to. Okay, the point where I realized that what I needed was rest. And in resting, I was able to reconnect to myself. In resting, I was able to find my voice. In resting, I was able to become who I want to be, or just start to work towards becoming who I want to be. Now, I never knew who I wanted to be, because I was told who I was meant to be. I was told, controlled, showed, guided, into becoming someone that they wanted me to be. And I got burnt out. I didn't want to be that person because something in me wasn't getting it. Something in me never wanted to go with that flow. And in trying to not get to the point where I end it all, or where I run mad, all I needed to do was rest. That's all I needed to do, rest. And in resting, I was able to realize that, reality doesn't just happen in one way. Even though the world or the system, the 1%, the people in charge, want us to believe that this is the only way to live life, through the rules and regulation and the expectation that they have created. But that is not the only way reality can be lived. Like, reality can be experienced in infinite ways, and you don't have to be chasing to be able to exist in this particular reality. You don't have to be grinding, hustling, working. You don't have to do those things. Now, there are people that actually have lives where they get everything that they want without putting in zero effort. They get it because that is the reality that they have been programmed to experience. Now, that particular reality is not rampant because that particular reality is not profitable to the 1%, to the system, to the government, it's not profitable to them. That is why it is not rampant. But there are people that are actually existing and experiencing that particular, see that reality, they are existing right now, they are experiencing it. There are people that are experiencing even better. There are people that are experiencing reality where everything is easy, everything is smooth, everything is exactly how they want it, and that is the reality that they're experiencing. And then there is us, the 85 to 90% of people that have been programmed to see reality in a certain way, which is one way, walk, marry, walk, marry, die, I guess. But that is not the only reality that exists. So that's the point I got to, the point where I was overwhelmed. And if you're at that point, this particular book is going to actually open your eyes to seeing that the benefit in resting is in you reconnecting with yourself. Now, once you're able to reconnect with yourself, you're actually going to start realizing that there are certain things that you have the abilities to do. Like, there are certain things, it might be infinite, you can never tell until you rest. So resting is like a blessing where whatever it is that you decide to do after rest or during rest is going to be effortlessly, it's going to be better, it's going to be more than the constant chase. Now, what are the disadvantages of resting? Again, you're going to be shown by your society, by the government, by your immediate environment, people, your relatives, your loved ones, your friends. A lot of things are going to happen, but to me, those are not disadvantages. Those are actually advantages in a way. Hear me out. Now, if you're doing something that benefits you, and if you're doing something that benefits others, which of them is better? Like, which of them to you is better? Because if I have to lose friends, if I have to lose people in the society, if I have to be shunned by the government but still get something that benefits me, something that brings nourishment to my soul, something that brings happiness, freedom, fulfillment to my body, my mind, which do you think I'm going to choose? Of course, I'm going to choose the one that benefits me. So to me, that's not even a disadvantage, that's also an advantage, because now the more people that live your life, the more energy you have for yourself, to nourish yourself, the more energy you have to, get to know yourself, the more energy you have to discover who you are, who the fuck you are, the abilities that you have. Okay, so yeah, that is, to me, disadvantage in an advantage way. So is it worth it? Is it worth it? Is rest actually worth it? Is actually worth it? Okay, so in resting, you come back into alignment. In resting, you come back into what you were created to do. If you notice, every other thing exists in life apart from human beings. Every other thing exists in life without doing as much as we human beings are doing, but we are all existing and living in this particular reality at the same time. The animals, the trees, the birds, every other thing is actually existing without doing as much as we are doing. So which of these creations are out of alignment? Every other thing, 1 million of things that God has created, they are doing nothing, and just one creation is doing something constantly. Which of these? Hello. Welcome. You look so nice. Thank you. Welcome. Thank you, Mama. Which of these things are out of alignment? 1 million doing nothing, one doing something. Think. Critical thinking. But anyways, that's what my book is all about, Committing a Crime Called Rest. I am going to come on here and read part of this book and have like a conversation. I just wanted to come on here and talk about why I created this book or why I wrote this book. It's a very short book. Again, straight to the point. This book brings automatic, instant awareness to you, okay? For you to see that if you continue to follow the society just the way they want you to follow, you're going to get burnout. You're going to, be in the loop, that cycle of hustling, and you will never see it until you die. But once you start to pay attention, you're actually going to realize that this is like a default setting. Chasing is a default setting, a setting that comes with the programming, and you as a person can actually rest. You can actually take a rest. There is no crime in resting. There is a crime in resting when it comes to society, but personally, like, so wise, you need it. You need it more than you need any other thing. Rest, okay? So expect my kind of book reading, and also I have other books available. All these books I've written so far: Committing a Crime Called Rest, Who is Your God, If I Could Go Back in Time. I'm actually writing one called Being Chosen. I've made a video about it, a short video, but then I'm working on the book. All these books are going to be available on Seller, which some of them are already available on Seller for very, very little price, less than $5-6, which I'm going to be increasing the price for 2026 because, again, this book brings instant awareness. So I'm going to be increasing the price from 2026, but right now it's actually sold for less than $5-6. One of them is actually free. One of the books is actually free. If I Could Go back in time, it's actually a free book available for everybody. So the link is going to be on this video, the description box. If you are interested in reading it, go click on the link and read. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed the book. Let me know in the comment section. Bye.